Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Varsity Maine Live, presented by Central Maine Power. Central Maine Power, we're committed to building a smarter, stronger, and more resilient grid. At CMP, we're Mainers invested in Maine. Learn more at cmpco.com. And now, sports editor of the Portland Press Herald, Don Coulter.
Well, good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight for a special edition of Varsity Maine Live. Tonight, we'll be unveiling our finalists for the Varsity Maine Awards for the 2021-22 school year. It should be a fun show. We have 6 awards altogether that we'll be handing out. They include the Male and Female Athletes of the Year, Teams of the Year for both boys and girls sports, and all right, I don't know if that was a technical glitch. I couldn't tell if I was muted or not, so I apologize. But our 6 award categories, once again, are Male and Female Athletes of the Year, Teams of the Year for boys and girls sports, and also Games of the Year. These are some of the most exciting games and most dramatic games that we had during the school year. So tonight, as is usual with the Varsity Maine Live, we have a crew of sports reporters who will be discussing these awards and the finalists. And they include Travis Lesargic of the Portland Press Herald. Travis has been our host for the show throughout the school year, 26 shows in all. Michael Hoffer from the Forecaster, Adam Robinson from the Sun Journal, and Mike Mandel from the Kennebec Journal. So they will be discussing the finalists for each of these awards. And then the winners will be unveiled in a magazine that will come out on Sunday, your Sunday newspapers, the Maine Sunday Telegram, the Sun Journal, and Central Maine Sunday. So you want to be sure to pick up a copy of that. So you might wonder, how is it that we came to decide upon the finalists that you'll hear about here this evening? As well as how did we decide on the winners. So late in the school year, the reporters who cover high school sports and the editors who are very much involved in high school sports were asked to submit nominations for each of these 6 award categories. From there, we came up with lists that in some cases, we had more than 24 nominees for each of the award categories. And we convened a panel of journalists from throughout the company, from the Sun Journal and Central Maine newspapers, the Forecaster, as well as the Press Herald. And we, from there, had a roundtable discussion and got down to 5 finalists in each category and eventually the winners. And I can tell you from being a part of these discussions that there were many fine athletes, many fine teams, as well as exciting games that didn't make the cut as a finalist, but still some excellent folks and excellent teams throughout that. So once again, be sure to pick up the Sunday paper where you can see our magazine, and the magazine is very cool. It also includes not only stories about the winners, but it includes stories from throughout the school year, a lot of memorable stories, features, events that took place. A very nice keepsake magazine, so get out there and buy that. All right, now I'm going to shut up and turn it over to my pal, Travis.
Don, thank you. Gentlemen, let's just jump right into it. Let's start with the Girls Team of the Year. These nominees are going to be all in, or finalists, I should say, are going to be all in alphabetical order. Starting with the Camden Girls Swimming. This is a team that won the Class A state championship for the first time, and they did it without winning an individual event. They won a couple relays and then just piled up points with depth, finishing second, third, and fourth in just about every event of the Class A meet. A rare feat to win a state championship without an individual champion or two. The Camden Hills girls swim team was the definition of a true team. Next, Cheverus field hockey. Michael Hoffer, you covered this team throughout the season. What can you tell us about the Cheverus field hockey team?
I can tell you that they were absolutely dominant and one of the best teams that we've seen down here in a long, long time. There've been a lot of really good teams that have come out of the West or the South over the years, and of course, you run into Skowhegan in the state game, and you generally go home unhappy. A couple of Scarborough teams over the years actually managed to beat Skowhegan in the state final, but no one dominated them the way Cheverus did in this year's state game. And really, they were just an impressive team from start to finish. They had some veteran players who really stepped up, and then they added Lucy Johnson, just a terrific freshman. And other than a couple of close games with Scarborough, one in the regular season, one in the regional final, there was no slowing down this powerhouse. And with a lot of players coming back, you better look out, because I think Cheverus has a great chance to make another run at the state title. And, some of these girls went on and participated on the basketball team that won a championship as well. So we haven't heard the last of this Cheverus team, and just watching them play. I mean, they were, how field hockey is. A lot of games are 1-0, 2-1. They're putting up 6, 7, 8 goals a game, and pretty impressive to watch and a lot of fun to watch.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Next team on the list is the Kennebunk girls lacrosse team. I saw this team make its run throughout the Class A playoffs this year, culminating with another state championship for the Rams, second straight championship, straight undefeated team. And Michael was just talking about a dominant team. I think you have to put the Kennebunk girls lacrosse team in that same category, often winning games by 10 or more goals. Next is the Skowhegan basketball team. Mike Mandel, what can you tell us about them?
Well, Travis, the Riverhawks didn't just go undefeated to a state championship the year. They dominated everybody. Their closest game was a 12-point win over Erskine in the Class A North, the Class A North semifinals. Really led by Jaycie Christopher, whose name we'll be hearing later tonight. Just a dominant team that really never came close to losing all season long. I know 3 years ago they had a team that had hope for a championship game that didn't quite get over the top. This one did, and they made it look really easy at times.
Mike, thank you. And the final finalist for the girls' team of the year is Winthrop field hockey. Adam, tell us about what the Ramblers accomplished.
The Ramblers went 18-0 on the season. We talked about, Hoffer and Mike Mandel both talked about dominant teams, and this team was no different. Winthrop field hockey outscored their opponents 110-5 over the season, which is just incredible if you really think about it. And then in the state game, which we'll get to later, they scored with just over a minute left to win. Maddie Perkins led the way, and this was really the group to do it. It was a senior-laden and experienced team. It's Maddie Perkins's second state title with Winthrop, and I think just the 110-5 scoring discrepancy, I think, tells it all.
Definitely. Okay, that's the nominees or finalists for girls' team of the year. Boys' team of the year will start with Cape Elizabeth football. Michael Hoffer, you saw these guys quite a bit. Tell us about them.
Just a terrific team, and next year finally arrived in Cape Elizabeth. The Capers have been knocking on that championship door for a long, long time, and twice they'd even got to the state final, but they hadn't yet won it. And this year they knew they were going to have to go through Leavitt to win the championship, and they lost a regular season game to the Hornets, which meant they had to go up there for the regional final. And, Cape had pretty much dominated and crushed everyone throughout the regular season. But the one close game they had is the game that we're all going to remember. And I know Adam's going to elaborate on this a little bit further down the road, where they went to Leavitt and won the regional final in epic fashion after an unbelievable drive on the final play of the game. And Caden McDuffie scored the touchdown to send them to the state game. And, the state game was a little bit anticlimactic, if you will. They beat Winslow 53-8, and, they dominated from start to finish there, but just a terrific program. Caden McDuffie, of course, went on to win the Fitzpatrick Trophy as well. And next year finally came to Cape Elizabeth, and next year might be another next year for Cape Elizabeth, because this program is still going to be very, very strong. Sean Green's established just an absolute juggernaut there.
That's a lot of next year's, Michael. Thank you. Next up, Marshwood Soccer. The Hawks won their first Class A state title. I think it was their first state title period since the mid-90s. They did it coming out of a very tough Class A South. They had to beat Windham and Gorham in their final two regional games, both shutouts, to advance to the state game, where they took a 2-1 win over a very good Brunswick team. Next, Nokomis Basketball. You might have heard of them throughout the season. Mike Mandel, tell us about what the Warriors did.
Well, I think everybody who watched Maine high school basketball this year knows what the Warriors did. Another team that I believe took home their first state championship. Only losing one game to Brewer early in the year, a loss they avenged not only once but twice, both times in double-digit fashion. Obviously, everybody knows about Cooper Flagg, who is off to Florida after his freshman year. He was just an unbelievable talent, something Maine hasn't really seen before. His brother Ace was also a big contributor, and then Madden White, who had a few 20-point playoff games, really pushed the Warriors in a winning direction. And that Brewer team was a team that. And that Brewer team that was a team that people were wondering was if it was going to be really tough to beat. I think if there had been a season in 2021, they would probably have been the state gold ball favorites, and they returned a lot of those players. So Nokomis did really well to get over that hump, not once but twice, and bring home a gold ball down in Portland.
Mike, thank you. Next up is Thornton Academy Baseball. The Trojans won their first Class A state title, which astounds me because they've been around for so long and been a contender so many times, but they took it this year for the first time. They were led by Cody Bowker, who was, I believe, the Gatorade Player of the Year. So the Trojans are on our finalist list. And finally, the Waynflete Tennis team. Michael Hoffer, tell us about Waynflete.
Well, as I like to joke, the sure things of spring are mosquitoes and black flies, lengthening days, fickle weather, and the Waynflete boys tennis team winning a state title. Because every year since 2008, the Flyers have won Class C, with one exception. The only thing that could prevent them from winning a championship was a pandemic. And this program, it's really remarkable how year after year after year, they graduate great players, but they turn right around and they reload. They play a tough regular season schedule. They're a Class C team, but they're playing powerhouse teams like Yarmouth and Greeley and other contenders in the regular season. And it really gets them ready for tournament play. And, singles, doubles, they've got 3 sport athletes who step in and contribute. And they know that they have the bullseye and they have expectations year after year after year, and they embrace them. And they rise to the occasion and they meet them. And they're tied with Old Town Swimming for the longest run of championships, 14 in a row. And I'm not a betting man, but if I were, I'd say the Flyers have a pretty good chance to get that record all to themselves next year.
Okay. Thank you, Michael. And those are the finalists for the boys team of the year. Next up, girls game of the year. We have 5 great games that we covered throughout the season, from fall right through spring, starting with girls ice hockey. It was Cape Elizabeth, South Portland, Waynflete 5, Falmouth 4, in about a gajillion overtimes. Michael Hoffer, I think you covered that game, didn't you?
I sure did, and it was actually just part one of 2 games that memorable Saturday night at True Ice Arena in Portland. Because following this game, Cheverus and Scarborough went to triple overtime before the Red Storm won that one. But this Cape Falmouth game was memorable for a lot of reasons. The Capers were really the dominant team in the regular season. They were the top seed. They were expected to win relatively easy, but Falmouth pushed them to the brink. Falmouth actually led with 7 seconds left in regulation when Cape Elizabeth managed to just fire in a prayer from the blue line that found the net. And then the game went to overtime after overtime after overtime. And finally, Libby Hooper ended it. And the top seed was able to advance. But you got to wonder how much it took out of this team, because in the regional final, they did lose to Scarborough. But it's the longest girls hockey game on record in the state. And it was really an unforgettable night.
Okay, thank you. Next game is girls soccer Class A South semifinal. Gorham 1, Falmouth nothing. We don't have a photo from that game, but I was there, and I can tell you the driving rainstorm doesn't even halfway begin to describe what the weather was like that day. Game was decided on penalty kicks. These teams also played a scoreless draw in the regular season. In the playoff game, Libby Fry won it on a penalty kick goal. You couldn't find 2 more evenly matched teams No quarter was given. Just a great, great game. I have a feeling if the overtime rules didn't call for penalty kicks, they'd still be out there right now trying to decide this one. Just a fantastic game. Weather didn't seem to affect anybody on the field. The rest of us were soaked. Next game, Scarborough 3, Biddeford 2. This was the Class A Girls Volleyball State Championship. Michael Hoffer, what can you tell us about this match?
Well, I think what was the most impressive part of this Scarborough win, which was utterly dramatic, they had to come from behind. I think they even had a match point staring them in the face at one juncture, but they won it on Biddeford's gym floor. And this was a Biddeford team that had beaten Scarborough earlier in the season. This was a Scarborough team, I think, coming into the year wasn't really viewed as a title hopeful, but they really came of age. They had a freshman named Natalie Moynihan who stepped in and really was a star for them, along with some established players. But winning on the road, essentially it was a road match with the state title on the line and pushed to the brink, and they found a way to get over the hump and do it. Just high drama. You know, volleyball is a sport of so much excitement. It's a sport of momentum, and they had the last surge. And as a result, as you can see from the photo, they got to laugh last and celebrate last.
Okay. Another volleyball game is on our list. This is the Class B State Championship. It was Yarmouth 3, Cape Elizabeth 2. Back to you, Michael, because I think you saw this one.
I did. I didn't cover the A game, but I get to cover the B state match. And, you know, these Cape Elizabeth and Yarmouth have become the two preeminent programs in Class C. And it's the third straight season that they've met in the state match. And actually Yarmouth pretty much handled Cape Elizabeth in the two regular season meetings, but this time around the Capers came to play and they pushed Yarmouth to the brink. Like the A match, it was also on the at the gym of one of the finalists. Yarmouth hosted this match, and they needed the energy of their home fans to come back. You see number 6, Sophie Dixon, raising her hands. One of the great setters the state has ever seen. She kind of willed her team over the finish line there at the end, and the great rivalry with another chapter, and there's going to be more written down the road between these two teams because they've really had some terrific matches over the year. None better than this one.
Okay, thank you. Finally, on our list of the girls' game of the year finalists, it was the Class C Field Hockey State Championship. It was Winthrop 3, MCI 2. Adam, tell us about this game.
Yeah, I kind of alluded to it earlier. Winthrop scored with 1:14 left after MCI scored to tie it at 2-2 with 3 minutes left. Maddie Perkins scored her second goal of the game with 1:14 on a play they called zipper off of their 6 corner of the game. They kind of pass it back and forth at the top and bring the defense and the goalie to one side, and then they find the other post, and that's what Maddie Perkins did. It was their closest game of the year. I talked about it earlier, where they outscored their opponents 110-5, and Maddie Perkins was the difference. Just like she was all year. She scored 33 goals and 22 assists in the season. She was the MVC Player of the Year. She made the Maine Field Hockey Association All-State team, has a bunch of school records, and she did it all, and she did it all for Winthrop there in a really close game. Winthrop's kind of first real big test, and of course it comes in the state title game because that's how usually it goes, and just a really impressive team, an impressive game, and an impressive senior for Winthrop there.
Adam, thank you. Those are the girls' game of the year finalists. Boys' game of the year, we'll start with one that was being played at the same time as a state championship basketball game that Michael and I were at. So we weren't at this one, but it was Brunswick 4, Cheversh Yarmouth 3 in boys hockey in 5 overtimes. Michael, we weren't there, but what can you tell us about this amazing game?
Yeah, well, what I'll remember about that night is that, you know, the Yarmouth basketball team was playing for a state title, as you mentioned, at the same time. And, you know, everyone was coming up to me, what's the latest from the hockey game? We hear it's in overtime. And I'm like, yeah, it's in the second overtime. It's in the third overtime. It was just a wild night. And, you know, that game started well before the basketball game tipped off, and it ended after the basketball game, which went to overtime, ended. So just an absolute marathon. You know, Brunswick, Zach Stern-Hayes finally got the goal that won it. And that propelled them to a kind of maybe a bit of a surprising state title because they went on, they upset Greeley in the regional final, the 2-time reigning champs, and then they beat Camden Hills to win the championship. And then I believe 11 kids from the hockey team went on and played lacrosse this spring and led Brunswick to a surprise Class B championship where they upset Yarmouth again. So I think the members of the Clippers on that Yarmouth Cheversh team have had enough of Brunswick, but just an absolute marathon night. And I think it was more a case of Brunswick surviving than anything else, but they survived and advanced, and then they went on to win the championship.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Next game is one we talked about a little bit earlier with one of our Team of the Year candidates. It was the Class C South Football Championship, Cape Elizabeth 25, Leavitt 23. Adam, you were there. What do you remember about that game?
Man, this was one of the craziest games I've ever seen. Leavitt came in as a favorite, like we mentioned earlier. Leavitt beat Cape in the regular season, and they had a really, really explosive offense, just kind of like they do every year. You know, they have Hunter Hayes, who was a quarterback sometimes, and Noah Carpenter, a sophomore, is going to be a rising junior. He also ran quarterback. They had a million weapons, and so they start the game off really, really strong. And then Jack Buta, their all-state offensive and defensive lineman, dislocates his elbow about midway through the game. And that leaves a pretty gaping hole in the middle of their front line on both sides for Leavitt. And Cape Elizabeth took advantage. They went on a 10-minute drive at the end of the game, 18 plays. I couldn't believe it. I kind of just looked up about halfway through, and I was like, wow, there's only 5 minutes left, and they're about at the 45. It was just 3-4 plays at yards at a time, and Caden McDuffie at the end, we mentioned him also, 3-yard touchdown run as the time expired to win the game. He called the hole that he had in the middle the size of a semi-truck, and he wasn't wrong. He had that hole the entire second half with Buta out, and then they went on, like we said, to win convincingly in the state title game. Just a really phenomenal game, really fun, and I think both teams will be back at it again next year. I'm really excited.
Thank you, Adam. Next game was the Class 8-man small state championship game for football. It was Dexter 34, Maranacook 30, decided on the final play of the game when Dexter quarterback Bryce Connor rolled to his left and then rolled all the way to the sideline, scrambled right when he saw nobody open, evaded a tackle. The horn went off, signifying the end of the game, evaded another tackle, found Avery Gagnon at about the 5-yard line, wide open, got him the ball. Gagnon makes the catch, walks into the end zone. Touchdown, Dexter wins their first state title since the late 80s when they won in Class C. And then there turned out to be in a little controversy when a video showed that maybe Connor had crossed the line of scrimmage before he rolled all the way back to his right. But nobody at the time made us think about it, so I think it's a lot of Monday morning quarterbacking. But just a phenomenal game. Maranacook never trailed until that last play. Neither team really ever led by more than, I think, 10 points throughout the game, back and forth, back and forth. Just a great game and a great showcase for 8-man football in the state of Maine as that continues to grow. Next up, a basketball game. It was in the Class A North Boys Playoffs. It was Oxford Hills 48, Edward Little 47 in overtime. Adam, fortune found you at this one also.
Yeah, this was one of the craziest basketball games I've been to. And I went to a few really, really good ones this year, but this one topped it. Obviously, it's on our list here. John Shea, one of the top players in the state, Mr. Basketball for a reason, for Edward Little, did it all this whole game. I think Edward Little swept Oxford Hills in the regular season, and he was playing real hard and really well this game. But Oxford Hills made it really, really tough on him, and I think he was kind of tired at the end, and he missed 2 free throws up one with about 10 seconds left, I believe. And Tegan Pelletier took a pass off the rebound, ran up the court, pulled up from about 12 feet, and drilled a fadeaway to give Oxford Hills the Class AA North final victory. Tegan Pelletier did it all for the Vikings, and they went and played tough against South Portland in a loss in the state final game. But just incredible back and forth. It forced overtime. There's so many good players, so many good shots. Shot making was incredible in this game, and the atmosphere was awesome. Both teams really know how to bring a fan base to games. So I had a lot of fun, and there's video of it on the sunjournal.com that you can find of the game-winning shot. It's quite incredible.
And there we're looking at a photo of Pelletier's game-winning shot right there. Thank you, Adam. Finally, a game we mentioned earlier that Michael Hoffer and I were both at. It was the Class B state championship game. Yarmouth 59, Ellsworth 52 in overtime. Mike Mandel, you were at that game too, I think, covering Ellsworth at the time. What do you remember about that night?
Yeah, so just aside for our viewers, at the time I was covering sports for the Ellsworth American in Hancock County. Yeah, it was a great game. It was Ellsworth led most of the way. It didn't have a huge lead. They think they led by between 5 and 8 points for much of the way, but Yarmouth hung around with that tough defense. And after Ellsworth went up 10 with I'd say a little over 3.5 minutes left, I could be wrong in the exact time, Yarmouth just made shots and went on a run and forced overtime. And by the time they went to overtime, had all the momentum. Peter Syhogos, and Hoffer will have to correct me if I butchered that last name.
You're close.
Had a 27-point, 15 rebound performance. Matt Waldner made some big shots for Yarmouth, and Hunter Curtis was good in the first half for Ellsworth. Chance Mercy had a decent game, but Yarmouth ended up prevailing. And, we talk about some great state games. This is the third Class B final in a row that's been incredible. In 2019, you had Caribou snapping its 50-year state title drought with that double overtime win over Cape at Cross Arena in Portland. In 2020, you had that Maranacook Caribou game, which was possibly one of the best games in the history of high school sports. That 80-79 double overtime win, and then this overtime game between an Ellsworth team that had been undefeated and a Yarmouth team that was really strong all season, fantastic defensively, and got hot at the right time, and they just managed to be the team that pulled it out in the end.
Michael Hoffer, Stu Walsh's baseline three with 7.5 seconds left to tie it up. Just talking to Stevie Walsh and his coach after the game, that was something that they prepare for that shot in that moment, don't they?
Yes, I mean, they call Stevie Walsh Stevie Wonder, and for good reason. Actually, during Yarmouth soccer team's run to the championship last fall, he scored an overtime winning goal and another late goal in the regional final. So his legend was already beginning to grow prior to the basketball season, but that three is probably the biggest shot in the history of Yarmouth basketball. And, like Mike was saying, they were playing from behind the whole game. They went down 10. It really looked like it was over. And even then, with time running down, I mean, it was going to take a miracle, and just a beautifully designed play. And Stevie Walsh with ice water in his veins made the shot. And then you could really see once the game went to overtime, Ellsworth just you suffer a blow like that, it's really hard to respond. And down the stretch, Matty Waldner and Peter Syhogos just took over, and they wouldn't be denied. And Yarmouth, what a great run. Ellsworth, what a terrific team they were. And I know it was a painful loss for them, but sometimes life works in funny ways. A lot of those Ellsworth kids came back this spring in baseball. They were on the brink of losing the state final to Freeport, and they somehow scored 3 runs in the 7th inning to win that. So it's funny how life takes different twists and turns, and doesn't mean they wouldn't like that game back from March 4th, but at least they got something.
That's a very good point, Michael. Thank you. Yeah. Those are the boys' game of the year finalists. Now we're down to the 2 categories. I'm sure a lot of you are tuning in to hear the athletes of the year. We'll start with the female athletes of the year finalists, beginning with Mount Blue's Emma Charles. Adam, what can you tell us about Emma?
Yeah, Emma Charles, I don't think got enough credit or publicity for what she's been able to do over her whole career. I know that this award is only taking into account the 2022 or 21-22 season for Nordic skiing, but Emma, she won her 7th, 8th, and 9th individual Nordic titles. She finished first in the classical 1840.3, the freestyle 12 minutes 56 seconds, and then the freestyle pursuit 31:36, which is just those 2 put together. But 3 state titles at Black Mountain this year makes it 9 total. Only reason she doesn't have more, I think, is because of the pandemic, like we mentioned. She also led Mount Blue to the 2nd team title of her career. And then she went and qualified for the New England junior national team, and she placed 12th in her age group at the event in Minnesota this winter. She was doing a lot of Eastern Cup races with her club team during the season to kind of keep her going, because she would win by quite a bit in the high school sports, in the high school competitions. So she she branched out and was racing all over New England, and then would come back for high school races and practices and whatnot. So just a really phenomenal skier, and I was fortunate to be able to follow her career at the Sun Journal.
Adam, thank you. Next up, Jaycie Christopher from Skowhegan. All she did was win Miss Maine Basketball, leading the Riverhawks to the state championship in Class A. And then she won Miss Maine Softball this spring, leading the Riverhawks to the regional final. First athlete to ever win both awards in 1 year. She's a 1,000-point scorer, and she will be continuing her college basketball career at Boston University next year. So congratulations to Jaycie. Next up, Katelyn D'Apollonia from Yarmouth. Mike Hoffer, what can you tell us about Katelyn?
She is the quintessential three-sport athlete and the quintessential teammate. Just someone that is incredibly talented and dominant herself, but really prefers to set up her teammates. And the thing I'll always remember about Katelyn, she had an older sister named Sarah, who was one of the best girls soccer players we've ever seen, led Yarmouth to a couple of state titles. And after her senior year, I was interviewing Sarah, and Katelyn walked up to me and said, "Hi, I'm Katelyn. I'll be in high school next year. I'm going to break all of Sarah's records." Well, she didn't do it in soccer, although she did very well in soccer. She was a very good soccer player and a very good basketball player. But lacrosse is really the sport where she dazzled the most. And she only played 3 seasons because of COVID, but she graduates with 124 career goals. She holds the Yarmouth program record with 10 goals in a game. It actually happened in the semifinals against Cheverus. And she wasn't even healthy at the start of the season, but she just did it all. I mean, taking draws, winning draws, collecting ground balls, forcing turnovers, as I mentioned, scoring a ton of goals. And probably what she's most proud of is all the assists that she provided. And Yarmouth was playing its first year in Class A. There wasn't a lot expected from the Clippers this year, but due in large part to D'Apollonia's brilliance, they got to the state final and gave Kennebunk a pretty good scare there.
Okay, thank you, Michael. Next up, from Gardner High School, Lizzie Gruber. Mike Mandel, what can you tell us about Lizzie?
Well, Gardner just had a fantastic year across all girls sports, from volleyball to basketball to just winning the softball state championship. And Lizzie was a big part of that success on the volleyball court and on the basketball court. All varsity Maine selection in volleyball. Gardner was 16-0 before running into a tough Cape Elizabeth team in the state semifinals. And then turning around in basketball, she averaged 18.8 points and even more impressively, almost 17 rebounds. She just had a lot of size, and that led her to a lot of success on both ends of the floor.
Thank you, Mike. Our final female athlete of the year finalist is Sarah Talon of Windham. Sarah was a standout on the state championship Windham girls soccer team, a natural scorer for them. She's also a talented basketball player who was an all-state candidate there and a Miss Maine basketball candidate. She will be playing basketball at the University of Maine next year. So congratulations to all 5 female athlete of the year finalists. Male athlete of the year, we'll start with Andrew Farr from Gorham. Michael Hoffer, tell me about Andrew.
Just as you can see, one of the top sprinters, he and Frank Moran and Cheverus, who we see here in this photo, they had a pretty good rivalry during the course of the season, and some exciting races, not only during the season, but in the postseason as well, culminating with a great sprint finish at the Class A state meet. And, Gorham has certainly established itself as one of the top Class A track teams in recent years.
Thank you, Michael. Next name is not going to be a surprise to anyone who watched high school basketball in the state of Maine this year. It's Cooper Flagg of Nokomis. Mike Mandel, you just spent some time with Cooper the other day in his hometown when he got back from the World Championships.
Yeah, and I wrote a column on this that appeared on centralmaine.com last night, and will be appearing in tomorrow's newspaper. But yeah, no, it's just been an incredible year for Cooper Flagg. You can talk about the numbers, the 20 plus points and the 10 plus rebounds he averaged per game. But just not just what he did numbers wise and winning a state championship, but what he did in Maine high school gyms. I mean, you had people going down just from all over the state just to see him. I remember after the Ellsworth boys team beat Orono in the Northern Maine Championship game basketball, they're like, we're going to. I remember asking Hunter Curtis, one of their players, and he said, I asked him, what are you guys doing to celebrate? And he's like, well, we're not going to go home just yet. We're going to go down to Augusta and watch Cooper Flagg. This being just 20 minutes after they had hoisted their trophy and cut down the nets. Everybody wanted to see him, even his fellow boys basketball players 3 years as senior were desperate to go see this kid. He's just a phenomenal athlete, and we saw it over there in Spain in the tournament in the U17 World Basketball Cup as well.
Thank you, Mike. Next up from Scarborough High School, Jayden Flaker, Michael Hoffer. What can you tell us about this kid?
Well, I mean, there's really nothing he can't do. And he's been a star since he came in as a freshman. He followed in the footsteps of his older brother, Jarrett Flaker, who's now sprinting at George Mason. And Flaker is a top-notch football player. He's actually going to play football in college at North Carolina Central. But really, he did most of his damage on the track this year. He won the 110 hurdles and the 300 hurdles at the Class A state meet this spring. And even more impressively, he actually did a second sport this spring. He played lacrosse as well. And he was one of the top defensemen in Class A. I mean, they would put him up against top attackmen like Tiernan Lathrop of Cape Elizabeth, for instance. Yeah. And Flaker would hold his own, and you'd see Flaker pick up a ground ball and run the ball into the offensive zone. And it was something to behold. He actually scored a goal and assisted on 3 others. So he literally did it all this year. And we've only begun to hear about his exploits because he's got a pretty exciting future.
Thank you, Michael. Next up, Alex St. John from Thornton Academy. Alex, one of the rare athletes who was an all-conference player in football, ice hockey, and lacrosse. He was the SMAA Player of the Year in lacrosse and an All-American there. He was a finalist for the Travis Roy Award as the top school hockey player in the state. And he was a standout on Thornton Academy's state championship winning football team. So Alex will be moving on to play college lacrosse at Division I High Point University next year. Finally, Oxford Hills, Eli Soehren. Adam, you saw a lot of Eli this year. What can you tell us?
It was really fun to see a lot of Eli this summer, last fall, excuse me. He just did it all-purpose yards, 2,800 yards, 33 total touchdowns. The only, kryptonite, I guess you could say, was Thornton Academy, but he played really tough in against them in the regular season and the state final, but he could flick it for a 50-yard touchdown. He had a couple really strong receivers too, like Tegan Pelletier and Matt Doucette, who would go and catch everything for him. But he would roll out and throw it, roll out and take off for 60 yards. I saw him do that a few times. He's a really good punter. He had 4 interceptions on defense. He does it all. He's the whole package. He's going to be a senior next year, and I think probably the leading candidate for the Fitzpatrick. I just can't say enough good things about him. He's so fun to watch, and I would encourage people to go out next year. And if Oxford Hills is in your town, I'd go watch him.
Yeah. Okay, thank you. And those are the finalists for the Male Athlete of the Year. That's going to do it. That's our 6 categories and our 30 finalists. Want to thank Adam, Mike, and Michael for joining us, Don for introducing us. Reminder that you can find out the winners by getting a copy of the paper on Sunday, whether it's the Press Herald or the Kennebec Journal, Morning Sentinel, Sun Journal. Pick up your magazine and find out who won these awards. And reminder to check back with varsitymaine.com, and we'll have the best high school sports coverage in the state again for the next school year. Thanks for joining us.